Imagine waking up in the morning and asking yourself, what does it mean to be useful? Just convenient, not just comfortable, but genuinely useful for your family, your community, for the people who depend on you, and ultimately for God's greater plan. Being useful isn't the same as being busy. A shovel can sit in the garage for years, perfectly polished, but if it never breaks the ground, it never fulfills its purpose. In the same way, our lives can look orderly on the surface, yet if we are not engaging in the work we were made for, then the deepest meaning escapes us. Usefulness is not a trivial thing. It is the cornerstone of a meaningful existence. When you strip away all the distractions of modern life, when you silence the noise of entertainment, consumption, and superficial ambition, what you are left with is a question that haunts every human being. Am I useful? Do I serve a purpose beyond myself? Without usefulness, life becomes shallow, and shallow lives often collapse under the weight of their own emptiness. It is not enough to simply exist, to drift through days waiting for pleasure or comfort. Those who refuse responsibility and reject usefulness eventually face despair, because human beings are not designed to be idle spectators. We are made to act, to build, to serve, and to carry weight that stretches us beyond our immediate wants. Usefulness is not simply about doing tasks or staying busy. It is about aligning your abilities and your will with something higher, something that brings order to the chaos around you. If you look at the patterns of life, you will see that meaning emerges precisely where responsibility is accepted. The parent who wakes up in the middle of the night for their child is useful, and that usefulness gives their life depth. The worker who does their job with integrity, even when no one is watching, is useful, and that usefulness provides a sense of dignity. The friend who listens and offers support in a time of crisis is useful, and that usefulness forges bonds of trust and love. In every case, usefulness is tied to sacrifice, to the willingness to give of yourself for the sake of something or someone else. And in that giving, in that effort, you discover that life is not just bearable, but meaningful. Being useful requires you to confront your own tendency towards selfishness and avoidance. It demands that you rise above laziness, cynicism, and fear. The easy path is always to retreat, to say it's not your problem, to convince yourself that someone else will take care of it. But that attitude erodes the soul, because deep down, you know you are evading your own potential. Usefulness challenges you to step forward, to face what is difficult, and to contribute your strength even when you feel weak. And paradoxically, in that struggle you find renewal. You realize that you are stronger than you imagined, that your life has weight, that your actions matter. When you pray to be useful, you are not asking for an easy life. You are asking to be sharpened like a tool in the hands of a craftsman. A dull blade cannot cut, no matter how well it is decorated, but a sharp one fulfills its purpose with precision. To be useful means being shaped, sometimes painfully, into something capable of carrying out good work. It means resisting the temptation to seek only comfort and instead embracing the burden that builds character. Every day offers you opportunities for usefulness, from the smallest gestures of kindness to the largest responsibilities you can shoulder. To ignore them is to waste the gift of existence, but to embrace them is to step into the kind of life where meaning thrives. To be useful is to transform suffering into service and chaos into order. Life is filled with suffering, and that is a fact that cannot be denied or ignored. Everyone carries pain, disappointment, loss, and uncertainty. The temptation is to let suffering turn into bitterness, resentment, or despair, to let it paralyze you and shrink your capacity to act. But usefulness demands something different. It requires that you take that suffering and convert it into fuel, that you refuse to let pain go to waste. When you take your own hardship and use it to serve others, when you allow your wounds to become the very thing that enables you to help someone else, then you have transformed suffering into service. That is not just resilience, it is redemption. It is taking the broken pieces of life and shaping them into something that benefits others. Chaos is everywhere. It is in the disorder of the world, in the unpredictability of events, in the failures of institutions, and in the storms of our own minds. Chaos cannot be eliminated completely, but it can be confronted. To be useful is to stand in the middle of that chaos and bring order where you can. A single act of courage in the face of fear creates order. A decision to do what is right instead of what is easy creates order. A willingness to shoulder responsibility when everyone else steps back creates order. In every small step where you take what is broken, disorganized, or neglected, and you impose care, structure, and intention, you move the world closer to stability and truth. Usefulness is not passive. It does not wait for conditions to be perfect before acting. It steps forward even when the ground is shaking. It understands that suffering will not disappear on its own, that chaos will not organize itself, that meaning will not come to those who simply hope for it. Meaning emerges when a person takes responsibility to bear suffering and shape chaos. Think of someone who has endured profound loss, yet instead of letting it destroy them, they use that experience to counsel and comfort others who suffer. That is useful. Think of someone who grows up in disorder and dysfunction, but chooses to build a family rooted in stability, love, and discipline. That is usefulness. Each example shows that the raw material of life, no matter how dark, can be transformed into something purposeful if a person is willing to act. This transformation is not easy. It requires discipline and humility. Discipline to resist the urge to collapse into self-pity or rage. Humility to recognize that you are not the center of the universe and that your pain, while real, can be directed towards something greater than yourself. Suffering can make you self-absorbed, but usefulness turns your attention outward toward others, toward contribution. Chaos can make you anxious and scattered, but usefulness forces you to build, to structure, to create. In both cases, you are no longer a victim of life's conditions. You are an active participant in shaping them. The prayer to be useful is, therefore, not a request for a life without suffering or chaos. It is an acknowledgement that those forces will always exist, but they do not have to rule you. They can be transformed through effort, faith, and responsibility into something that brings light into dark places. Usefulness is the process by which human beings become agents of order in a world that always threatens to collapse into disorder. It is the way we participate in God's plan to redeem what is broken and to heal what is wounded. God does not call us to comfort but to purpose, and purpose always requires sacrifice. Human beings are naturally drawn to what is easy, to what brings immediate relief, to the kind of comfort that shields us from pain and responsibility. Yet the deeper truth of existence is that comfort alone does not satisfy the human soul. It can pacify you for a while, but it will not provide meaning. A person who only chases comfort eventually finds themselves restless, because comfort is fleeting, fragile, and shallow. Purpose, on the other hand, anchors you. Purpose provides a direction that gives weight to your life, and it always demands something from you in return. It requires sacrifice because nothing meaningful is ever gained without the willingness to give something up. Think about how every story of greatness is built on sacrifice. The athlete who reaches the peak of performance has surrendered years of ease, enduring pain, discipline, and struggle. The parent who raises children sacrifices freedom, time, and personal comfort in exchange for the growth and stability of their family. The leader who shoulders responsibility for a community sacrifices privacy, leisure, and often safety in order to guide others towards something better there. In each case, the comfort that could have been chosen was abandoned in pursuit of a purpose that gave life meaning. This is the paradox. What you give up in comfort, you gain in strength, depth, and fulfillment. When you pray to be useful, you are not asking for an easier life, you are asking for a meaningful one. That means preparing yourself to let go of illusions, distractions, and habits that keep you weak. Comfort whispers lies. It tells you that the easiest path is the best, that avoiding struggle is wisdom, that pleasure is the same as joy. But the reality is that the pursuit of comfort alone makes you vulnerable, fragile, and empty. It is purpose that strengthens you because it compels you to sacrifice the trivial for the eternal. To be useful in God's hands is to step willingly into challenges that stretch you, that burn away selfishness, and that build endurance. Sacrifice is at the heart of every meaningful tradition. From the beginning of human history, people have recognized that life demands an exchange. To create order, to secure the future, to establish meaning, something must be given. Sacrifice is not destruction, it is transformation. It takes what is valuable in the present and offers it up for something greater in the future. When you give up your comfort to pursue responsibility, you are making an offering of yourself, aligning your will with God's design for growth and service. Purpose without sacrifice is an illusion because purpose always costs something. The greater the purpose, the greater the sacrifice required. Consider how Christ himself embodies this principle. His life was not one of comfort, it was one of purpose, and that purpose demanded the ultimate sacrifice. Through that sacrifice, meaning was revealed, order was restored, and redemption was made possible. This is the pattern written into reality, that the road to usefulness, to true significance, passes not through comfort, but through the willingness to sacrifice. It is through giving up what is shallow that you inherit what is profound. True usefulness demands discipline, not convenience, and character, not appearances. Convenience has become one of the most powerful temptations of modern life. Everything around us is designed to make things easier, faster, and less demanding. But what is convenient is rarely what is transformative. Discipline is the opposite of convenience. It requires effort, consistency, and often doing what you do not feel like doing. Yet discipline shapes you into someone who can be relied upon, someone who can carry responsibility with strength and dignity. Without discipline, usefulness is impossible because usefulness means showing up when it is difficult, following through when it is tiring, and staying committed when distractions press in from every side. Discipline is the quiet force that builds character over time. It is not glamorous, it does not demand attention, and it often goes unnoticed. Waking up early to pray when it would be easier to stay in bed is discipline. Choosing honesty when lying would protect your image is discipline. Working diligently at tasks that seem small or unimportant is discipline. Each of these choices seems insignificant in the moment, but together they form a foundation of reliability and strength. When discipline becomes a pattern in your life, you do not have to wonder if you will rise to the occasion. You already know you will, because you have practiced it in the smallest corners of your daily existence. Appearances, by contrast, are fragile. They are concerned with how you are seen, not with who you truly are. Appearances can be faked, polished, and displayed for admiration, but they collapse under pressure because they lack substance. Character, however, is what remains when appearances fade. Character is what you are when no one is watching, when there is no applause to win, no recognition to gain. True usefulness flows from character because people can only trust and depend on what is real. A life built on appearances may impress for a while, but when the storm comes, it crumbles. A life built on character may not always shine with external polish, but it stands firm when tested, and others find safety in its strength. To cultivate character, you must be willing to reject superficiality and commit to the deeper, harder path. That means telling the truth when lying would make you look better. That means taking responsibility when it would be easier to shift blame. That means sacrificing immediate gratification for long-term integrity. Each act of discipline refines your character, and each act of character increases your usefulness. This process is not quick, and it cannot be achieved through shortcuts. It demands patience, humility, and a willingness to endure discomfort. But the result is a life that has weight, a life that others can lean on without fear that it will collapse. Convenience and appearances promise ease and admiration, but they leave you hollow. Discipline and character demand effort and sacrifice, but they leave you solid, rooted, and capable of bearing burdens that matter. When you pray to be made useful, you are asking to be shaped into someone who is disciplined enough to resist distraction and strong enough in character to act with integrity. Usefulness in its truest form is not about how good you look doing something, but about whether what you do brings genuine good into the world and whether you yourself are trustworthy enough to be an instrument in God's hand.